Okay, hurry everybody. We're gonna start. We're so happy that you're here. I already have gotten confused about how to do Google Slides. Okay, great. So hi everyone, my name is Max. Before we all introduce ourselves, I just wanted to give you a bird's eye view of where we're gonna go with this presentation. Information session. First, we will all introduce ourselves. There's 3 of us on camera, but there's a bunch of really excited people behind the camera too, who are so excited to meet you all. After that, we will talk a little bit about our mission, what we're trying to do here at Zumwalt Acres and why it's important to us. After that, we'll head over to our work. We'll talk about what we do every day and what kinds of responsibilities we have here on the farm right now, and then we will transition to talking about what the future will look like. So what our future cohorts of apprentices will be doing when they're here. So without further ado, my name is Max. I use the pronouns he, him, his. I go to Yale, and I study environmental studies and political science. And maybe as we're doing our introductions, it would be awesome if you guys could just send in the chat where you're from and any relevant affiliations. So if you're enrolled in a university or if you're a part of a company, anything you want us to know about what group you're affiliated with. So I'll just turn it over to Remy and Gabi.
Hi, I'm Remy. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a student at Middlebury College, and I'm studying neuroscience and dance.
I'm Gabi. I also use she, her pronouns, and I am studying at Yale Mechanical Engineering and Urban Studies.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a student at Northwestern University, and I'm studying social policy and economics.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I use she, her, hers. I'm a student at Yale and an environmental studies major. I'm going into my senior year.
Hi, I'm Claire. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I go to University of California, Santa Cruz, and I am a double major in environmental science and anthropology.
And is Sam on the call? Sam's the other.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sam. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I'm also in Chicago this weekend, so feeling a little left out, but it's fine. And I go to Washington University in St. Louis, where I study math and computer science.
Amazing. So that's all of us. We're so excited to meet you all. Before we move on real quick, we are right now based in Sheldon, Illinois, but we also wanted to acknowledge that we're actually on Peoria, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi land. So without further ado, we will start the info sesh. Oh, I think we will. Yes, we will.
Awesome. Okay, so there's a lot going on in this graphic, but we hope that by the end of this info session, it'll make a lot of sense to you. So our first tenet on the top is healthy and sustainable agriculture in the Midwest. And what that means is that we're here working to change the future of Midwestern agriculture by transitioning from industrial practices, which strip the soil, to regenerative practices, which build up the soil and are also beneficial for food production and mitigating climate change. And then that brings me to our second tenet of climate change mitigation. And what that means is that we're really dedicated to fighting climate change through research and agricultural techniques, which includes producing biochar, cultivating an agroforest, and incorporating basalt rock into the soil, which are all terms that we'll go over later in our presentation. Then we have education, which is creating an intentional community oriented around teaching and learning. We want this to be a live and learn community in which we learn from one another and our surrounding environment, and we give back by sharing our findings, including local farmers and students in our projects. And then lastly, we have pursuing social justice, or in Judaism, we call it tikkun olam, which means contextualizing our work within the broader history and tradition of agroforestry and regenerative agriculture. So then that brings us to our story. So J.R. Zumwalt, who is mine and Gavi's father, grew up on this farm and really witnessed the shift from polyculture to industrial monocropping within the span of his childhood as he was growing up. And so firsthand, he saw the devastating effects on both the land and the community Sheldon went from having over 50 businesses to only a handful of struggling shops and restaurants. There was also a huge decrease in visible wildlife diversity. And we are really inspired by his vision for this farm that began over 40 years ago when he was in college and envisioned a perennial farm that integrated livestock and worked with the natural resilience of diversified systems as compared to monocropping corn and soy and relying on chemical pesticides and fertilizers. And he remains a guiding figure in our work at the farm. So we want to make the land, the farm, and the Sheldon community vibrant again. And by incorporating both agroforestry and biochar and basalt soil amendments, we can revitalize the soil and the wildlife. And we want to do this in a cost-effective manner so that other farmers can realistically adopt these methods, as our goal is to ultimately reimagine agriculture in the Midwest.
So going into the different ways that we fight climate change here at Zumwalt Acres, the number one is biochar, which is really just a special way of burning organic material in order to create a charcoal type substance, sort of similar to charcoal you might have seen before, but we burn it in a controlled way so that a really high percentage of the carbon in the original material is then stored in this black carbon, in this black charcoal. And the carbon can be in a stable form for hundreds of thousands of years and even more. So all of those CO2 emissions that otherwise would have been emitted into the atmosphere when waste materials naturally decayed is now stored in a stable form that also helps revitalize the soil. So we add it, we mix in soil and biochar in order to create really nourishing soil to plant our plants in. It increases soil fertility, it increases water holding capacity, it can attract heavy metals. It's a really incredible substance. Soil can also emit greenhouse gases, and by incorporating biochar, it turns the soil into a sink rather than a source. And we produce it with wood from dead trees on our site. We can also use hazelnut shells. We're trying with corn stover since we have a lot of that around here. The second way is basalt. And so basalt is really just a type of rock. It's found really commonly on the earth. It's the most abundant bedrock. And it enhances a natural occurring process where compounds in the rock react with CO2 from the atmosphere and pull the CO2 from the air into the soil, into the waterways, and eventually into the ocean. And once it's in the ocean, it actually works to combat ocean acidification and rebuild corals. Also, basalt increases soil fertility and can be a great replacement for limestone, which is a really common soil additive, especially in this region, which has a lot of harmful environmental impacts, whereas basalt has many positive environmental impacts. The last way is through our agroforest. So trees are really amazing. They sequester carbon dioxide in their root system, in the biomass, and they provide habitat for native species to flourish. So with agroforestry, we can produce profitable crops, nourishing food, while actively decreasing atmospheric CO2. There are some other ways that we're fighting climate change in our work, which include focusing on perennial rather than annual crops, using cover crops, minimizing tillage, and eliminating the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides.
So our current cohort brings a variety of skills and experiences. Our majors really range a lot from mechanical engineering to environmental studies to computer science to neuroscience. And so we really are inviting of people who come from all different backgrounds. And so in terms of sharing our work with those around us, we've been doing preliminary outreach to local schools, especially those with agriculture classes, and the spring cohort will continue to foster those connections. We also plan on working with future Farmers of America chapters in our surrounding area to connect with young people who are excited about revitalizing farming. In the long run, we want to host events and other volunteer opportunities for local kids and students from the Chicago school system. And by reaching out to schools and other youth networks, we really seek to inspire a new generation of sustainable farmers?
So we really want to make sure that when we're doing our work here, we're doing it in an informed and intentional way. So I came here, I'm Jewish, and my Judaism has Jewish principles of environmentalism and land stewardship have really influenced my dedication to regenerative agriculture and combating climate change. And I know the same is true for Remy and Gabi, whose family has owned this farm for generations. And this season at the farm, we celebrated Jewish holidays like the harvest holiday of Sukkot, and we've had Shabbat every Friday through Saturday nights. But in the future, we want to encourage apprentices to bring any faiths or spiritualities to the farm, including not only the customs and practices and traditions of those faiths, but also the tenets of land stewardship that their faith holds. We have so much to learn from different faiths about how we can imagine our relationships to the land. And we see our farm as an interfaith community that draws upon Jewish principles of land stewardship to guide our work. We're cognizant also of the prevailing narrative around regenerative farming practices as this kind of new concept that is sort of purported to fight climate change. But the reality is that indigenous communities have been practicing agroforestry and sustainable agriculture for much longer than industrial farming has been around. So we hold a weekly discussion with a rotating discussion facilitator where we talk about how we can contextualize our work within the broader historical and cultural context of agriculture. We also really prioritize having a healthy community here. We find that we get more done and have more fun doing it when we put in that extra effort to communicate about where we as a community have been doing well and where we've been falling short. We have a weekly community meeting to get everything out in the open and to love on each other a little bit. We also do this thing where when someone has done something to make our community stronger, we just write that thing down and we put it in a special jar called a fill bucket that person has. And then on Friday nights, we all sit around and read through all the notes that we got that week. So that's just been a big highlight of my time here for sure. And some other ways that we hold ourselves to a standard of intentionality in our work include the sort of expectation of the political engagement that we had in this house around the election, and the effort that we make to be inclusive and welcoming to everyone we interact with, whether that's here in Sheldon or virtually. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about what our day-to-day life looks like. And I will preface this by saying that our days are pretty varied. They do change a lot depending on what different tasks need to get done around here or what obligations we have online. But generally, our work fits into two big buckets, outside work and inside work. Our work hours are 10 a.m. through 5 p.m. After that, our time is our own, unless you're on dinner duty or you're milking the goats, which are rotating responsibilities that we have every week. So in terms of outside work, so every week when we're making biochar, we try to make at least 3 loads of biochar per week. So we have to collect all of the wood or corn that we use to make that biochar, and then we have to actually have the burns. And then after we've done the burns, we actually did this for a long time today, we have to activate the biochar. So that means that we basically layer it with dirt and manure to turn it into this supercharged soil that's really great for growing things. We also build garden beds and have other farming infrastructure as needed. So that's another sort of general farming outdoor task that we have. And when there are bigger, more technical tasks that need to be done, we're really grateful that we have J.R. Zumwalt, Remy and Gabi's dad, who pops in once a week and who will often takes on those technical tasks and will help us make plans for the farm's agricultural systems moving forward. In terms of inside work, what I mean by that is grant writing and video editing. We write blog posts, we plan research, we analyze data, we strategize our outreach. Some of us here also will have classes or part-time jobs or lab meetings. And then besides that, after 5 p.m. and over the weekend, that time is ours. And we will use that time to go on walks in the woods or hang out with the cows or the goats, watch movies, and we've even visited downtown Chicago, although of course can't promise that will be feasible in the future. Don't know what the COVID situation will look like going forward.
Yeah, so to highlight some of the main things we've accomplished in the last couple of months since getting here in the end of August. First thing is we've applied to a lot of funding opportunities and secured over $30,000 in funding for our farm, and we're working on applying to more. Then we've built 4 raised beds and a 9-row perennial nursery for our trees and shrubs. So those are all set to go for the spring to get planted. We've also planted veggies in our greenhouse. We're starting to eat them now. Last couple nights we've had amazing salads with our spinach and radishes and lettuce. We have some romaine, peas, beets still growing. And then we've been working to assess our forest and fields to figure out what really should be planted, where and when, testing our soil, analyzing the pH, getting to know what species are where, just really getting acquainted with this land so that we know what it should look like, how we should be handling it going forward. We've also fostered 3 goats. I love them so much. They're adorable. We've grown really attached to them. They were just foster goats. We're bringing them back once we are all away for the winter months. We did have some ups and downs getting to know them, getting to figure out how to milk a goat every day. But we've gotten there and we'll miss them a lot. In the spring, we're hoping to have chickens, more goats, maybe other animals. So hopefully some of you all are excited about taking care of animals. So what's left for you to do? There's a lot. We can get into some of the specifics of the spring. So number 1, we'll be planting our agroforest. So what does that mean? We'll be ordering, before we leave here, we'll be ordering saplings, cuttings and seedlings, basically baby trees and shrubs to plant in our nursery, as well as in a small orchard, which doesn't exist right now, but will be when you all help us plant trees in the spring. We'll be building a pollinator garden. We'll be planting lots of veggies and fruits to feed us all, maybe a sweet potato patch. And then we'll also be working to inoculate logs to start a mushroom production in the woods across the road. So that'll factor into our forest farming. We'll be ordering some mushroom cultures and it'll be really exciting. We'll all be learning together. I've never done any mushroom cultivation before, so excited to learn about that. We'll also be continued conducting research. I've been conducting research on biochar and basalt with an advisor at Yale, and I really hope that all of you will be interested in helping me out with that project, as well as bring your own ideas for research. We really believe that it's important that we keep tabs of everything we're doing, keep clear records so that we know what we're doing and what's working and can communicate that to other farmers and people in the area. Field-based scientific research on regenerative agriculture is really needed right now. So lots of space for you all to bring your ideas. Then we'll be facilitating outreach. Like we've talked about, we've developed a wide network of researchers, scientists, farmers that we really rely on. We turn to these people when we have questions, since a lot of this is sort of uncharted territory. But they are so willing to help us, and we've kept really good track of who we talk to and how they can help us, so we can pass that on to the next group of apprentices, and you all will be able to reach out to them, look to inspiration and answer your questions. And you should expect to be sending emails, setting up calls, hopefully some COVID-safe meetings with surrounding farmers, community members, people who come to visit here, as well as potential field trips, site visits. And then lastly, as we've talked about, an intentional community is really important to us. It's not always easy to be living with 7 to 10 people in a small environment, but it's incredibly rewarding. Spending time with one another, communicating openly, having meaningful conversations about what we are doing here and why, taking care of the physical space we are in. It's different to be managing all of the outside area, the barns, keeping tabs on all of that is part of what we're doing.
Okay, great. So this last section is sort of our expectations section and outcomes. First, I'll start with expectations, or what you'll bring here. So commitment to our mission and fostering community. So what I mean by that is this whole thing will only work if people believe in the work that we're doing and are willing to work together to build a strong community even when things get tough around here. Willingness to lend a hand and be involved in a variety of tasks. We really value a can-do attitude. We have a weekly Monday morning meeting to plan out the coming week in as much detail as we can, but at the end of the day, things pop up all the time. And when those things pop up unexpectedly, we need apprentices who will readily volunteer to help with them rather than shying away or abdicating that responsibility. A clear sense of your own boundaries and needs. You're living out here with 6 to 10 other people in rural Illinois. That means that the majority of your time will be spent with those same people. So it's important to know what your living needs are and what kinds of boundaries you'll need to create in order to be happy here. For example, you might be sharing a room if you're here. Direct communication, clear communication. Similarly, it's important to be able to articulate clearly when those boundaries have been transgressed, with a particular focus on how that we can avoid those same interpersonal conflicts coming up again. We really value a growth mindset here. And self-direction, we don't have supervisors or bosses here, so really you'll be structuring your own time. If you feel comfortable coming up with your own tasks every day, your own checklists, then this position is for you. And finally, awareness of the pandemic. Probably the most important thing that I'll say. We expect heightened caution around the pandemic, regardless of the stage that it's in. We have no idea what the world will look like around March, but we can be sure that this pandemic isn't going away for a long time. So while the guidelines around how we manage COVID will be have to sort of be decided by the incoming cohort, we expect that everybody, once they're here, will adhere to those guidelines and will communicate openly about them often. Yeah. So what you'll leave with, what you'll gain. So hands-on work experience. They're in a time when finding job opportunities that actually allow you to, get some dirt under your fingernails, get your hands dirty, are few and far between. Here's one where you can spend the entire day outside if you want to, with a group of friends. Space to conduct scientific research. So for those of you with backgrounds or interests in the sciences, 2 apprentices this year, as we mentioned earlier, one of them being Gabi, spent the semester conducting research into biochar and enhanced rock weathering. And that research will continue in the spring. So you're more than welcome to jump in on that. Or if you have your own research ideas, then please bring them. Research is also a great way to secure some funding. Freedom to implement your own ideas. Enough said, your time here is really going to be your own. Engagement with experts. So over the course of the semester, we built up a network of professors and researchers and farmers and nonprofit leaders who are excited to continue working with us. So we get to take advantage of that. Roots in the Midwestern agricultural community. We want Zumwalt Acres to be a place that gives back to the Sheldon community, and we've already begun to build meaningful connections with other farms in this region. So you'll get to be surrounded with that community as well. And finally, the loving community here at Zumwalt Acres, that's the real reason why I came. This is a really magical place, and it'll bring out the magic in the community if you let it. So that's it. Before I end the info session, we head on to a question and answer section. I just wanted to touch on some final logistical details. So we do have 3 terms. We have a March through June term. We have an early June through September term, and March through September or later. All of these sort of start and end dates are pretty up in the air. It'll be up to the incoming cohort to sort of decide when makes sense to come and leave. But if you are interested in joining us for the spring or for the full season, then the application deadline for that is a week from today. The summer application deadline will be announced soon. The reason we're holding off on that is because we are ultimately going to be making that decision based on the number of spots we have available, and that will be impacted by what kind of apprentices we bring in the spring. So cost of living. Living expenses here will include utilities, house upkeep, and food. But beyond that, you won't be paying any rent as you may be otherwise. And then beyond that, in terms of funding, we're happy to work with applicants to identify sources of funding, but we can't yet commit to providing financial support or a stipend. That being said, our funding policy is dependent on whether we get a series of grants that we've applied to. So that'll be updated early next week when we hear back from those grants.
I will also add that we are really hoping that we can work with you all to find other sources of funding if we aren't able to provide through grants, such as working with like your universities or other like small grants that come up for different opportunities. We hope that funding won't be a barrier for anyone.
So that's it. These are our goats, Ember and Donkey, and they are as excited to hear your questions as we are. So floor is all yours. If people want to throw out questions or write them in the chat.
I had a question. Are you guys currently like working on the farm and attending school?
So most of us are not in classes right now. There is Claire, who introduced herself. She's enrolled at UCSC, University of California, Santa Cruz. She's taking 2 classes for credit, and then a third class she's taking research for credit, which is the research she's doing here. And so that, yeah, so it is a lot to be enrolled in classes and also doing all the work here, but it can also be arranged. Another student, Julia, is enrolled at Northwestern through the practicum program. So this is her practicum, and she has once a week check-ins through that class. So there's some variation. In general, though, people are not enrolled in class.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, there are 7 apprentices total. Thank you for your question, Sarah. But in the future, that number is pretty flexible. We have space for up to 11 here. And there could be as few as, I guess, 7 is probably the minimum. Also, like I mentioned earlier, JR, their dad, comes in every week. And then there's also another Zumwalt that lives down the road that we see from time to time. He's been very helpful, actually. We love him, Johnny.
How do meals work? Like, do you guys go grocery shopping? Do you cook your own meals?
Yeah, so we cook all of our own food here. Like what Max was saying earlier, we have a rotating dinner schedule. So we have 2 people cooking dinner every night, and we have a different 2 people cleaning up every night, because that's an equally big task. So we go grocery shopping is fairly limited because of the area that we're in. So we go to Walmart once in a while. We also occasionally we'll order food from like Thrive Market, or occasionally can also have, if there are things from Chicago that we want to have, then we can also have JR bring us groceries. That's also an option. But yeah, like restaurants are very limited. It's very much like we are cooking the food here.
We also get Misfits Market boxes twice a week, which is like the imperfect produce sort of thing, which is really great. It's awesome. They deliver here. It's very reliable. And yeah, during the day, we all just kind of cook for ourselves. And then we all sit down for dinner together, and with that rotating schedule.
I will add that everything that comes down to like living arrangements, that is not set in stone by any means. We're fully expecting that every cohort of apprentices will end up deciding what makes sense for them. So this is just the system that we worked out, but next March it could look totally different.
We all bake sourdough every week.
Yeah, we make challah every Friday for Shabbat dinner, which is the braided bread.
How do you all know each other?
So a lot of different ways. Some of us went to high school together, are from Evanston, which is right outside Chicago. I know Sophie and Max from Yale. Yeah, that covers everyone.
Yeah, we're twins, me and Gabby.
Yeah.
Are any of you guys staying for the next semester, or is this like the first cohort sort of?
Yeah, so Remy and I will be here in the spring again.
But that's it.
Yeah. Everyone also is really excited to be like available virtually as kind of to help out. Yeah.
We also, this maybe wasn't super clear from the presentation, but once that next apprenticeship cohort has been decided, we're expecting there to be like a regular sort of Zoom to prepare, because preparation is necessary, and there's like a lot of sort of orientation that will need to happen. So that will also be going on throughout January and February, probably most concentrated in February.
Oh, hello. So I'm curious about the education piece. Like, have you been hosting students at the farm, or is it mostly like plans for the future, just given like COVID?
Totally. Yeah. So right now it's really been plans for the future, just because like right now we barely have anyone outside of our group coming to the farm just because of COVID safety. But we've been reaching out to local high schoolers, not high schoolers, but more like to teachers and administrators. And like we were saying, we've reached out to a lot of local Future Farmers of America chapters, which we're hoping that can play a big part in our future, but just are not super available right now.
And just a quick follow-up, is the vision like field trip based, or like apprenticeships with the littler ones?
Yeah, more field trips.
Okay.
Like again, so much of this is still evolving, and like you all, the next apprenticeship cohort, can have input on what this all will look like. But in the short term, we're imagining field trips, as well as maybe just like Zoom presentations, Q&As, that sort of thing. And we are actually planning a field trip for this group to series of like regenerative farms in Illinois next week, which is fun and exciting, something we didn't mention.
In terms of like finances, I know it's like up in the air, like based on like what Max said, like with the grants and stuff. But so would it be like we lived in like that one house and then we would pay for like the things on the slides, like utilities and stuff like that? Or like what would be covered like for sure as of right now?
So right now, the only thing that is for sure covered is rent. No one is paying rent. It's just the cost of utilities, upkeep, and food.
To specify about utilities and stuff though, because it's a little bit complicated with like the house ownership and who's actually getting the utility bills and stuff, it ends up going like everyone pays a set equal amount to like Zumwalt acres to pay for utilities, rather than like you actually getting the utility bills, which is like just nitpicky details that you may not be interested in. But just to clarify, so it's around like $200 a month for like upkeep and utilities, that kind of stuff. And then you all will order food and buy food and however much that comes out to.
But like what Gabby and Max were emphasizing, like we really don't want cost to be a barrier for anyone. We're really hoping that we will get grant money that we've applied for, but of course, like that's not guaranteed. And so we're also super committed to helping folks find funding through their institutions or through other sources.
We've also set up like a tutoring sort of side hustle, which it has been really helpful. Actually, many of us have gone jobs tutoring through that, and then like you get paid for an hour, and like for me that ends up covering the cost of utilities, which is really
and I was just gonna say, and then what we do with tutoring is that then like a small percentage of it goes to our like communal food fund, just so like everyone's helping out with that.
Where are you with the like produce and gallons of milk that you're producing? Where do they typically go to? Are they sold kind of in like more like local markets, or just like wherever?
Right now we're producing very small amounts of both, just like for us all to eat and consume. Going forward, like starting next year, hopefully even maybe we'll be producing a lot more. And so actually developing relationships with figuring out where we're going to sell those products once we have enough will be a part of what Spring Apprentices do. But we are hoping to focus on local farmers markets, maybe floral markets. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Will the cost of like seeds and other more farm-related goods, will that be covered by grants, or is that more expected that people would pitch in and help cover those? I mean, I know that'd be probably a really big cost for everyone.
That's covered by grants. That's that $30,000 of grant money that we were able to.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Do you guys have like set positions, or is it more kind of like fluid of who does what work and like social media and like those kind of like specific things?
So it is fluid. I will be upfront about that. But we also sort of have these project teams. Us three are the outreach team. And then we have like a policy team that's doing really amazing work with an organization called the Savannah Institute, which is dedicated to promoting agroforestry across the Midwest. So that's a really exciting opportunity because we have a direct hand in agricultural policy, which is amazing. And then, yeah, there are several other sort of project teams. Again, it is pretty fluid, and that's the way that we've done it. We have certain needs that need to be met that we're hoping that our apprentices will fulfill. But beyond that, the way that it all shakes out is up to the apprenticeship cohort.
Social media specifically, like we do have one specific person that's making sure that like we post on our Instagram and get the word out on Facebook. Yeah, so like Max said, there are some things that are like, turn to this person when you need this to get done. But we also all work on everything in some ways.
Could you talk a little bit more about who your mentors are and what kind of a role they play in making decisions for the farm?
Yeah, so our dad, JR, is definitely a primary mentor because he's been farming here for a really long time and has a vision for increasing biodiversity and growing food and all of these sorts of goals that we have in line. And so he's here about once a week and helps out when, especially like managing the tractors and like chainsaw and things that it's not always safe for us to do, or things that we still need to learn how to do. And also like advice on like, you should plant spinach in this way or that way. And then John Zumwalt, who's another farmer here, he's always around because he's like actively farming the corn and soy all around. But he's really excited about what we're doing and is also super helpful whenever we need like help with the tractor or anything like that. And also just talking about like for us to learn more about what conventional farming is like. And then we've developed this network, like you said. So I have an advisor at Yale for my research. Claire, who's also doing research, has an advisor at UC Santa Cruz. Adam Davis, who's the director of crop sciences at University of Illinois, has been super helpful. We've had Zoom calls with him. He answers our emails. Then some folks at Savannah Institute have been key. They are really focused on figuring out what crops to grow in agroforestry in Illinois and the Midwest. So we call up Bill Davison, their chestnut commercialization lead, all the time and ask him about where we should be getting our chestnut seedlings from, how many,
what our soil pH needs to be for them,
all those sorts of things. And all of these people will be happy to help all the apprentices going forward. There's some other professors at U of I that we've been working with. There's a grad student right now at Yale who's working with us on our strategic business plan. Yeah, there's a researcher named Kurt Spokas who has done a lot of really cool biochar research, and he sent us some equipment that he had access to, is offering to do our biochar testing for us, like just super willing to help out. And a lot of this was developed just through like cold emailing people, and now we've spent the semester building up these relationships. But just to give you all a sense that like, if you need an expert, like it's not as hard as you might think to find one who's willing to help out, for sure. I think I saw in the chat someone asked about other animals.
Oh, I answered that. In the chat.
Oh, okay, cool.
But
Sorry.
yeah. Could I apply as a freshman, or are you looking for older students? We're open to, I think, to all ages.
Yeah.
We would love to have you apply.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other cues? We also are 100% available by email, zumwaltacres@gmail.com, and by Facebook and by Instagram @ZumwaltAcres. We don't have a Twitter, but we do have a TikTok.
We do have a TikTok. It has one great video.
One primo video.
Shout out to Sam.
Shout out to Sam. I highly encourage you all to check it out.
But yeah, we're always available. So feel free to ask us any lingering questions if you don't have any that come to you right now. But yeah, we're just so excited to see all of you here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Yeah. And if you have like any problems finishing the application by the deadline, like with COVID and everything, things can come up. Just shoot us an email. We can work with you.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want that to be the barrier. And feel free to tell friends, spread the word if you know of anyone else who might be interested in applying.
Mm-hmm. Share our interest form and fill it out.
Yeah, it's great to have all your emails so that if we need to update you on anything.
Yeah, and also if you haven't, I think you all have, but if you haven't gotten the official application yet, send us a quick email.
Or even in the chat.
Or in the chat, yeah.
Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. It was amazing to meet all of you. Hope you all have incredible weekends. Excited to see your applications.